This particular tape will be the first in a series of tapes that will cover the classical weapons as used in the Chinese system. This particular introduction is a remake of one that I had previously. I had originally planned for this first tape to be strictly one tape, approximately 2 hours in length. As I got to the final editing, I decided that there was need for greater explanation and a breakdown on perhaps each of these weapon sets. In addition, I also decided to elaborate upon the introduction. For this reason, the first set now of tapes containing 6 different weapons will now be on 2 different tapes, unless you're in beta, which allows me generally to expand it to a full 3 hours. Perhaps I'd better give you a little bit of introduction as to the history of weapons, particularly in the Kenpo system, as related to the entire Chinese system. The basic Kenpo system lacked 2 distinct aspects of the martial arts that kept it from being a complete system. The first was the adequate presentation as a tournament fighting system. For this reason, my brother and I years ago then hired the world karate champion Joe Lewis to introduce tournament freestyle and full contact freestyle into the Kenpo system. The second aspect the Kenpo was lacking in was a set of complete weapons, and this is true of most of the other Gung Fu systems. They have all borrowed from others. What I have done now, for the last 20 years, I've been studying different weapon systems, the practical application, and their use within the system. At the end of now almost 25 years, I am formally putting together a series of weapon sets that will work from a progressive, simple to a complex system out of the perhaps 70 or 80 different weapon sets that I've learned and practiced. When it comes to weapons, most Americans, even within our own system, are completely unfamiliar with the use of weapons such as handguns, the knives, and things that make up our modern society. I found this is also true within the martial arts world. Most martial artists play with the different weapon sets and things like this, and very few martial artists have a true understanding of the knowledge and application of the practical aspects of self-defense. A classic example, of course, being the use now of such weapons as the throwing star. And contrary to the movies and popular belief, any object thrown any distance does not have a penetrating power, first of all, even to enter the human body, let alone do much damage, or as you see in the movies, an instantaneous kill. The same is true of the nunchuck. Here is a weapon that's used quite commonly throughout the different martial arts systems and schools and things like this, yet it's a very ineffective weapon. The fact that it takes so long to gain proficiency in this, and as opposed to the natural extension of the arm, such as a club, you have an uncontrolled length. As we talk about the basic application of weapons now, almost without exception, all effective weapons are simply an extension of the hand. A classic example of this is the common handgun used in all countries of the world. For those of you unfamiliar with use of a handgun or any weapon, remember, there is no such thing as an unloaded handgun, rifle, shotgun, or weapon. At all times, all weapons are loaded. You'll notice that the revolver, the rifle, any of these movements, any of these different weapons are simply an extension of the hand. The same thing is true of the bow and arrow. The same thing now is true of one of the most common objects you can grab, a club. Notice that your movements with the hand are simply extended in this particular motion from here by the use of the club. This is exaggerated even more when we take our basic staff movements from here. Let's take a basic figure 8 hand move, the block. The same thing is true from here. Notice the forward punch is simply the extension of the staff. For weapon to be truly effective then, that's exactly what it has to be. It has to be an adaptation that you would use with all of your hand movements. And this is what makes the Kenpo system quite effective when it comes to using the different weapons, all of the classical Chinese weapons. Every one of these is simply an adaptation of the hand movements we have in our different katas and self-defense techniques. We're going to break the introductory set of weapons into three main groups. First of all, we're going to work with the staffs. We'll have two staff sets, and I'm going to give a complete breakdown on this. We're going to have two sets that contain a spear. Then we're going to have two sets from here of weapons that consist of the sword. The first sword set will be a Japanese sword set, which will be the only bladed weapon set that I will introduce that is actually of Japanese origin, and I do it for two reasons. One, first of all, it's the first weapon set that I ever learned. And second, it will give you a chance to make a comparison between the Japanese application on a bladed weapon and the Chinese. The second bladed weapon that we will use will be the butterfly knife, which is, for all practical purposes, from a concealed weapon standpoint, one of the most practical of all weapon sets that you can learn. At this point now, I want to give a detailed explanation and breakdown of the origin and the application of the different staff that we have. Next to the short club, of course, the staff was the second weapon that man used against himself and other animals. It was one of the easiest things in nature to find that the classical staff was simply the branch of a tree that had been broken off and perhaps trimmed to size, or a small sapling itself. The Chinese, in particular, break their staffs into two applications. One we call the double-headed staff, and the other is referred to as a single-headed staff. The double-headed staff, while used in both north and south, is more common in the southern region. Since both ends of the staff are going to be used, and this is why it's called a two-headed and double-headed staff, it became known as an eyebrow staff. And you'll notice that this was an individual thing. As a general rule, it always came to exactly the height of the eyebrow because of the spinning movements, things like this, in relation to the height of the individual. It allowed you to spin the movement from side to side and use both ends without hitting the ground. The other staff used based in Chinese from here is a single-headed staff from here, generally tapered in nature, but the main difference between this is its length. The classical distance is as high as you can reach. So you have the difference between the eyebrow and as far as you can reach, which for rounding off is approximately 18 inches to 2 feet. The difference, of course, being the reach on this particular movement, and because of the reach involved in this, generally was not used in a two-handed movement from here where you're using both ends, but to concentrate the power and the advantage you have from the reach from here, it is generally used with the tapered end as a striking weapon. The third type of staff that we have in the United States now is more typically of the Japanese, or more correctly the Okinawan origin from here, which is generally a staff that's 6 feet in length, because this is the standard length of dowling that anyone can find. It's tapered at both ends. What this has a tendency to do then is to reduce the weight of the staff so the staff can be moved faster. Remember, in any type of weapon set, basically what you're using from here, and the staff is a bludgeon, the striking movement from here, it's a compromise, a trade-off of two different principles. First of all, the staff has to be light enough that it can be moved with speed. But secondly, it has to have enough weight so when the contact is made against the opponent himself or against the opponent's weapon or shield and things like this, that it will have enough power to make penetration. The difference, of course, being the difference between the power and speed of a jab and the power of a right lunge punch. The one great disadvantage that you have with a tapered staff is that basically it can be used only at short range. One of the classical advantages of the Chinese single-headed is that by swinging it from here, you can achieve great range in things like this. Also, classically, because the single-headed staff is normally tapered, when you swing it, because of the taper getting larger at the base of the staff, as it swings out and centrifugal force catches the staff from here, it gets tighter in the hand. If you try this with a tapered staff, it's exactly the opposite. The taper is getting smaller than at this point, unless you have extremely tight control. And this is a problem when you make contact with the individual and things like this. The hand will have a tendency to slip off completely because the taper is going in the opposite direction. As a general rule, this is not a problem within the Japanese and the Okinawan type of sets because it's generally controlled with both hands from here, and they do not reach out to the end and use it in a swinging movement. Notice also that if I try to use it as a poking movement from here also, that what I'm doing at this particular point in the tapered staff is losing the benefit of having the large butt end to grab with, because as I'm poking from here, I have a smaller end to control. The basic sets then that we're going to be using are going to be the classic Chinese, and generally the sets are a combination of both the double-headed and single-headed staff, so you have the advantage of both. We also have practical limitations we have to worry about today. I have a very large studio with 16-foot ceilings for clearance and things like this, and the average school and dojo, you may at the most have a 10-foot ceiling with limited space and things like this. So in the practice, what we find is a general rule, the staves are shorter than you would normally use in practical application. When we talk now about the practical application of the staff set, is that too many systems use the staff improperly. Classic example from this is that everyone assumes that on the staff, what you're trying to always do is strike to the head or strike to the body. Those become secondary targets. Remember, in any type of weapon, set in things like this, that weapon is going to be held in the hand. And this is the distinct disadvantage that you have, particularly with a two-headed staff when it's short. The primary target that you go against is never the body. It's always the hand. Because as soon as you've injured or crippled the hand, the opponent is no longer able to control their own weapon, not able to defend themselves. The classic difference, of course, being is that the staff is just an object you can pick up anywhere. When we talk about weapons, though, that were designed for fighting, without exception, they always have a guard. Take any weapon that has a guard. When the contact is made from here, slide in. Notice that the guard here will always catch and keep the blade from continuing in. This is not true of the staff. All you have to do is make contact with the staff, and I'll break this down with a part in a second, and follow in, and you can always make contact from here, the hand. This is why, then, the Chinese preferred what they call the king of the weapons, the spear. This particular spear is approximately 7 feet in length. This has been standardized for ease of application. It will vary anywhere from 7 to 9 feet. The advantage that you have against any type of sword or something like this, they can never reach the hand. And the primary application of the spear is the ability to shoot it forward with your classic spearing movement from here. So because you're able to keep your opponent at a greater distance, you don't have to worry about the hand or having a hand guard, because no matter where the opponent makes contact with your weapon, it's going to be at least 2 to 3 to 4 feet away from your hand movements. At this point, now, I will bring a partner in, show you the application either in a blocking movement, striking movement. The first movement that you always use against an opponent is also carrying a weapon, particularly in this particular case, a staff. Whenever we're working staff against staff, I could really care less about the skill of my opponent. All I really want to know is if it's going to use the opponent is going to use the staff as a two-headed staff or one-handed staff. If it's used as a two-handed, generally from here, the control is going to be more to the center. If it's used as a single-headed staff, generally they're going to use the reach. Against an opponent, I can really care less. I can take it, first of all, as an offensive weapon, or I can take it as a defensive movement. It really doesn't matter, because in each case, all I'm really interested here is striking the opponent's hand. Once you've broken the opponent's hand, crippled the opponent, they can't use the weapon whatsoever. What I'm going to do in this particular case is simply have the opponent take it in a position from here as if it were going to be used two ends. Okay. I can also, in this particular case, have either short or long. I'm assuming in this particular case that I have the advantage of length. Notice that this particular case, and even if I strike with the head, or I miss my movement, there's no way that the opponent, because of the distance from here, can hit me. No matter what the opponent tries to do from this point, there's nothing really the opponent can do to keep me from catching his hand. I'll take it first of all. I'm going to miss the hand, I hope, from here, and take it strictly as an offensive movement from here. Rather than strike to the head or the body, which the opponent is expecting things from here, the strike is going to be directly to the hand of the opponent. On the other hand, I can also use it as a counter-striking movement from here. Notice in the first one, I took it strictly as offensive movement and went to the opponent's hand. Let's assume that I want to make the strike to the head, and the opponent in the classical method from here blocks my staff so I can't hit the head. I could care less. I continue from here, following straight down the staff to take the hand movement over. A classical movement from here, if the opponent is adept enough on this one, is to completely clear my staff past the head, what we call a two-hand movement from here, so that I could not strike the head, so that it's cleared completely past the head. From here, I will continue in. If the opponent uses it to come with a second head from here, we'll now take it at a shorter, so it's used as a two-headed particular movement. Take a classic situation now, where once again, all of the opponents generally involved in the staff that is protecting themselves and then using the weapon to strike to the head or the body. What we're going to do in this particular case, I'll make the offensive movement from here, make the assumption the opponent's been able to clear the staff, pass the head, protect the hand, so we come in a counter. Once again, the opponent's interested in striking the head. All of my interest in doing is interrupting the attack so I can strike in a counter to the opponent's hand. This particular movement from here will take in such a situation, first of all, that my strike is to the opponent's head, but the opponent interrupts the movement from here. He's able to clear it. Notice as they come in with their strike, their primary object from here is to make the strike to the head. All I want to do is to interrupt that particular movement from here. And once again, my primary target is going to be the hand. Remember, once the opponent hasn't got any hands to use the weapon, then I can go in for any of the effective movements for what we call the kill. So your movement from here, as I make my strike to the opponent's head, the block is made. Notice the opponent is coming in with a strike to the head. I simply interrupt. Then at this point, if I don't hit directly to the hand, I simply continue to follow in. From this point then, we will drop the general discussion of the introduction of the different weapons. As we get into the individual weapons, there will be greater explanation made, particularly in the case of the spear and the swords. As we get now particularly into the staff sets, We'll give you first of all the staff sets, and we'll give you the application and individual breakdown of each of the movements from the offensive and defensive standpoint. The first weapon that we're going to formally work with is going to be the staff. As you remember, we have the two-headed staff, we have the one-headed staff. The first copy that I'm going to introduce you to, Darkroom staff, contains the elements of both. Basically, the weapon we have here is a plungent or striking movement. The movement from here as you're coming forward, the strike can also be a block. The first movement that you'll use then is either from a closed hand position or at a distance. Remember, the more you choke up on any type of weapon, the less power you're going to have. Also, you're closer to the opponent and you've lost the advantage you have with the staff. The primary movement of any staff, though, is the actual strike. This could have also been a block. When I break this down with the partner, and the application of the cotton become more apparent from here also, it can become a hooking movement and then use of the other end. Notice for this reason it's called a two-headed staff because it really doesn't matter which end you use. Once again, the primary use then is going to be the strike, the block, and the exchange of hands. Okay. The next movement that you want to concern yourself in any type of staff set is the turning of the staff from side to side. Let's assume that I have it on this side. I want to turn it to the other. Get it from here then. It's a matter of each of the hands at this point being in a position to turn over. The simplest maneuver for get side to side is simply to turn the forward and the back hand. As the exercise from here, it's done in a spinning movement. The hands can be far apart, getting from one side to the other. Notice that any of these times, I could have gone back this way, or I could have gone back on the opposite side. The other method of spinning is to keep the hands closer together. While this allows you to get more movement and turn of it from here, you do not have as good a control with both hands together as you have the hands apart. The next method that is used from here then is a swinging movement. You notice the greatest advantage of your swinging movement from here, of course, is distance. The next aspect we take from here is actually a striking movement such as you would use with a spear. Basically then you'll notice as we get into a staff, the movements are very elementary. There aren't that many. Basically, it is an offensive weapon, but remember, your striking movement forward from here could have just as easily been to block the opponent. The first movement used from here is either the block or the strike. We used it as a hooking movement to deflect. We used the opposite end. The next aspect then that we're concerned with is the spinning and the turning, either single or double-handed from side to side. This is simply a matter the same as you would in freestyle, switching from one side to other to take best advantage of your position and the opponent's. The next is the swinging for the distance, and the final is going to be the poke. The thing I like about the first set that I'm going to introduce to you now from your darkroom staff, and the name darkroom comes from the fact you're starting from a central position. Assume that you are in a room with no lights. It is a dark room. Each of the movements from here, you're going to move in a direction. You can always find the direction of how far it is to the wall, and your steps are always designed that you will always return to the central position. Hence the name darkroom. No matter where you come to, you retreat to this position, you advance in the next direction, you advance the direction behind. Basically this set then will cover 360 degrees. And even with your eyes closed, as if you were in a dark room, if you run into anything else, you should always be able to return to the neutral position in the middle. This staff set then is going to incorporate all of the basic movements you had. I will take it, first of all, simply as the set, slow enough that you can see it, and when I break it down with a partner, it'll make more sense. The basic staff set is taken off the right side. This is going to be the power movement. From this point, I will take the set simply as a staff set. The next phase, I'll walk through it slowly as I break it down for you. Darkroom staff. On this phase, I will now take the darkroom staff breaking down each of the individual movements, with particular emphasis placed upon the change of the hands to put the staff in the correct position. Your first movement from here, you'll notice since the strike is going to be across, that the right hand is in this manner from here, that you're striking and using the power of the hand. The left hand is basically used only for control. One of the greatest problems and mistakes that the average student has as they're working with the staff is that when they're using a single-handed strike forward, they keep letting the left hand come forward and they're losing the advantage of distance and power. Your first movement is I'm stepping out. Notice the right hand is slightly below the hip, so when I pick it up, the left hand can automatically at this point go to the end of the staff. Notice as I pick it up also, the staff is cocked slightly from here like a baseball bat to give me the strike forward. Notice that each of these striking movements as we're taking from here is high and directly to the head. Your first movement, I'm stepping in with the right foot. Picking the staff up, there is your first strike. Notice now the change in position of the hand. I'm going to block against the opponent's counter. If I do this, I'm pulling directly against the thumb at this point, which is not the strength of my hand. Remember, the thumb is always the weakest part of any grip. Your movement, 1. The hand is turned over, so as I hook and block with this hand now, I'm working against the strength of the hand. At the same time now, as I come forward, I'm striking. Notice that I'm getting my hand from here open, so that I'm not actually striking with my hand against the opponent's head from here. Notice that the strike is made with the opponent is going to be directly to the weapon. Once again, your breakdown. The strike 1. The hand turns over. It will slide down the staff as I strike forward at this point with the hand. Okay, your next movement from here now, I'm going to hook the right hand in this particular manner from here as I block across. Imagine in all of these that the opponent's weapon will use, for example, a staff. Later on we'll show it against bladed weapons from here. As you're making this blocks across the head. As I clear it, notice from here, once again I turn the right hand over from here so it is not exposed at all as I'm making the strike forward. Notice because of the closeness of this particular movement now that the left hand has not slid all the way to the bottom. Once again, breaking it down section by section. 1, the exchange of the hand. The hand slides down as I strike forward. I hook with the right hand, blocking high. It slides slightly now as I turn the right hand over and strike. At this point now, we're going to introduce the first of our spinning movements. As I break it down with the opponent, these are blocking movements. You'll notice that what I'm trying to do also on this one from here is to generate force, leverage, and power, and I do this by putting the staff from a stationary position into motion. So your movement from here is 1. I'm blocking down. Blocking. Notice at this position the hands from here. I let the left hand slide down. Once again now. The right hand turns over. Once again, so I'm working against here the power of my hand, not exposing my hand as I strike, and we always take it as a head level. Remember, I can always drop this down from here. The tendency when you're practicing, make sure you use the head as a target. You'll never have to strike any higher than that and block down. Once again, your hooking movement was 1 on the strike. 1, 2. At this point, this is where the transition of the hands will come. The left hand slides all the way down. The right hand adjusts over and you strike. Notice the pivot of the hip and the body to gain the power. The next section then is going to involve a series of our spins going from side to side. In the kata, we're going to have a designated amount. Remember, at this position, the object is that as I complete the spins, there's going to be a hand transition, and then I will step in a given direction. Your movement from here, from the previous motion. 1, 2, 3. From here, I'm going to take a double step back. At this point, it's done one of two ways. It's done with a single step, which is natural, or it's done with a double step. If you use the double step, from a technical standpoint in the kata, it will always enable you to end up on exactly the same line you started with. This is simply a technical standpoint. So your movement from here, for the demonstration, I will use a double step. Notice as I'm coming down now from here, the right hand turns over and the left hand. So you're basically in this position, so without changing the hands, you're able to do the spin. So from this position now, the right hand turns over, the left hand is already in position. I use the double step. As I step back, I spin by the left side. I spin by the right side. I spin by the left side. I spin by the right side. I will count these off for you from here. Remember, these are simply arbitrary and things like this. This is simply an exercise. And as an instructor beginning, you may even want to put 2 to 3 extra spins in here to get the student used to it. Your movement from here. Left, right, left, right. So what we've done at this point, we've had 2 complete spins on the left side of the body and 2 complete spins on the right side of the body. Notice at this position, we come to here. What I want to do now is go back to my original striking position. The left hand in this particular case now slides down to the end. The same movement we've used before. The right hand turns over from here to give my striking. Notice that this particular hand movement is used throughout this entire kata. Once again, we come from this position, striking from here. What I'm going to do now is to step from here directly back to 6 o'clock with the left foot. As I do, I strike head high. What we're going to do now is introduce the third phase of it. Notice that when we took the first set of spins, the body was stationary. The second set of spins was done with a double adjustment of foot, the body coming to a stationary position, then we took the spins. What we're going to do now and introduce the third phase of this kata is a coordination of the stepping as we use the spins. I will take it from the previous movements from here. Stepping back, left, right, left, right. I will pause it at this point, the exchange of the hand as you step and strike. Now to get to the spinning, once again, I will adjust the hands exactly the same way. The left hand adjusts up, the right hand adjusts to position. From here, as I step with the right foot, I do a half turn. I do a half turn. So what we've done now is taken the spin movement from here and transferred it to the right side of the body. At this point, I'm going to strike again. Once again, exactly the same procedure. The left hand slides down, the right hand turns over. This time we add, as I step with the right, we strike. What we're going to do now is to take the fourth phase of the spinning. I will retreat with it. Once again, the spin was in position. The spin, we step back, came to a stationary position. We advance forward as we use the spinning movement strike. This time we're going to retreat from here and use the spinning movement and a strike. Take it from your previous position, from here stepping back, the spin, the spin, the spin, the adjustment of the hand and the strike. Spin by the left side as you step right. Spin by the right side as you step left. The adjustment of the hand as you strike. Now, as I step back, I will adjust the hands to our standard spinning. The left hand adjusts up, the right hand turns over. As I step back with the right foot, we carry it by the left side of the body. As I step with the right, we bring it to this point. I want to strike. What we're going to do is shift our direction 90 degrees. Once again, I shift the hand and pivot and strike in with the hand. What we've now done in this basic kata is taking almost all of the elements of spinning that you're going to see in any advanced kata. The spinning is done in place. It's done stepping back from here, completed in place. The spin is now put in coordination with advancing forward in a strike. The spin in its fourth phase was then taken with the spin crossing both sides of the body, retreating the strike and the turn of the body. We will now introduce the next phase from here, where it's used in a poking movement, or if you visualize this as a spear, you use it as a spear. What I want to point out also, since this is not a spear, it is a two-headed staff. This is one of the elements of it. We're going to strike first forward with one hand, then we're going to turn over, and this is where the two heads of the staff comes in. It really doesn't matter which hand you strike with. I will now put this in combination with our final movements from here as we're striking forward. One, the adjustment of the hand, the step, the strike. The adjustment, the right step, the left step, the adjust, and strike to this position. At this point, we're now going to use it as a spear. I withdraw it slightly, spear forward. I want to turn it over. Therefore, I have to adjust the right hand over. The left hand has to come this position from here, the spear movement. The right hand then adjusts straight back as I spear to the front. Once again, this particular movement, the strike as we come forward. The spearing movement. The right hand turns over from here. The left hand comes down. Notice how it turns over also. So that's basically, I can hold it with one hand, spear it with the left. The next phase now is going to be what we call long-range movements. Notice everything that we've had up to this point has been fairly confined in the fact that we're in control with both hands. The next movement now is going to use the full reach of the staff from here. As I come around, we'll work the different heights. I'm going to use a spinning movement low, then we'll use a spinning movement to the middle section. We'll take it from here, basically as we came around. The first spearing movement, the second spearing movement. From here, I hook with the right hand. Clear low from here as we do. I release with the left hand. The left hand is used at this particular point to give me the momentum to transfer to the right hand. What we're going to do then, this will be the starting point from here. You'll sweep through with one low one. The right hand will pass once, it will pass twice, and then I will stop it. So your motion from here as you're coming around, the low sweep, one. Notice if I don't have any velocity on this particular staff, how the staff is going to at this point drop down. As soon as your staff is not parallel to the ground, it indicates you do not have enough speed and you do not have enough velocity. Be very careful when you're working this in the studio around mirrors or other students so you have plenty of room. Sooner or later, you're going to lose any staff that you have a lot of velocity on. Your motion, one, two, we stop it from here. The next movement from here now, we're going to go under. Visualize that the opponent's weapon is on top of mine. At this particular point, I'm going to strike up in a blocking movement from here. Obviously, if I've cleared the weapon, that means I have a low center line, and the strike is going to be with the right hand to the opponent's groin. So your movement, we stop it from here. Notice I come in, it is cleared over my left shoulder. The strike is made forward with the right hand. The kata then ends by withdrawing the right foot to position. You should end up in exactly the same position you started. When I break it down with an opponent, from here I will be able to be a little bit more exacting, show you the relationship of the hands, how you can actually use a staff against a bladed weapon from here, clear it into such a manner that you're able to neutralize the opponent's blade and be able to work against the backside of the sword, assuming, of course, that it is a single-edged sword. Once again, a lot of the detail from here, the explanation will come when I break it down with an opponent. Darkroom staff. As we start the breakdown of the darkroom staff, I'll explain the procedure that will be used. I will go through the kata section by section. I will take each of the sections, first of all, without an opponent working against any weapon. Then I will work the particular section with an opponent, change the direction if necessary, and in this particular case, we may use more than one particular weapon to emphasize the different movements. The first movement in the kata from here, from the basic position, I step in with the right foot, striking directly at the opponent's head. In this particular case, if the strike has been ineffective, or more particular, if the opponent has evaded the movement and counters with the right hand changes its position from here to hook and block the opponent's weapon as they're trying to counter the head as I step in and make my strike with an opponent. From here, in this particular case, the opponent is going to step back and evade my movement. It really doesn't matter. From here, in this particular case, they could have shuffled back. As I step in, strike the opponent's head, the opponent has evaded the movement from here. Notice now, as the opponent steps in to make the strike to my head and counter from here, the counter, I change the hand to adjust, first of all, to block now and clear the opponent's, in this particular case, staff past my head as I step in now and make the strike to the head. Taken at a different angle. Once again, from here, the opponent steps back. Notice it's right from here. If the opponent did not step back, my strike would have been effective to the head. In this particular case, the opponent steps back, rendering my first movement ineffective. The opponent steps in to make the strike. I counter. Notice as I counter, if I just work from here, I have a tendency now to work against the thumb, and I may lose this control from here and not be able to stop the strike to the head. I turn the hand over, hooking from here as I step in and make the strike. The second section will be used against a sword to show you how we can clear a sword even though it has a blade from here and not injure the hand. But I have to emphasize on this, this can only be used against a single-sided bladed weapon, things like this, because what we're going to do, we're going to end up placing our hand against the back of the sword to clear it. Once again, I'll take you through the first section from here to put you in position from here for the second section. From this position, stepped in, made. On the second section now, I have an opponent directly to the left side from here. As the opponent comes overhead with the sword, the first object I have now is to block the sword. So that's exactly what I do to clear it past the body. What I want to do at this point now from here is to keep from getting my hand cut. Also, I want to clear the sword past the body to do this. I continue it down, roll it over in such a manner from here that the back of my hand is now on the sword, clearing it past the body, then I come with a counter. I will take that section once again, then we'll repeat it at a different angle. First I block, clearing it past the left side of my body as my left hand is to the back of the sword and the strike is made to the opponent's head. I'll now take this at a different angle from here to give you a better view on that last motion. From this particular position, once again, the overhand sword, the strike is made. The sword from here is hooked. The left hand is placed on the back of the sword, clearing it past the left side of the body as we strike to the head. As they follow up to the previous movement, a close-up view so you can see the exchange of the hand. From the previous movement, as the opponent comes in with the overhead sword movement from here, notice the block is made from here to clear the sword. The staff at this point comes back. The left hand now comes to the back of the sword to clear the sword past the body, and the strike and continuation is made to the head. As we break down on the fourth section of the set, which involves your spinning movements, besides just being basic exercise, getting back and forth, I put approximately 5 inches of black tape on one end so you can follow the motion on this. And the exercise that follows against either a staff or a spear. It's complicated enough for you to learn for an exercise, simply the blocking and spinning with the one end. Eventually, we concentrate on both ends. But since this is the introduction, simply the beginning movements from here, we'll concentrate on strictly the one end as a blocking movement. As the lead into the entire kata this time with no opponent, so you can get down the individual sections. The first section was a block, the adjustment, and strike. The second was clearing the sword, the strike. The second was the block, the clear, the strike. The next movement from here is either single or double step back. We'll step back single, paying attention to the staff that's in the right hand. Spin, 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 spin. Adjust. This will actually be the end of this movement from here. We'll step forward and strike. Take it as an exercise. We'll take it against the spear, and we'll concentrate at this point only on the spear thrust at one end, concentrating for an abstract practice that can be done with both movements. So your final movement from here was a strike. As I step back, notice that my first movement on the motion from here is going to be down. So at this point from here, as I'm stepping back, that's exactly, the spear will be in a low position. Notice the first clearing movement from here. We'll concentrate on only the right hand. The spear is withdrawn. Coming from here, it comes across. Notice the spear in this particular position from here. At this point, the spear comes high. Notice the block. The spear is withdrawn. This time, the spear will come to the center line of the body. Notice my clearing movement across again. Notice as the spear is withdrawn, it comes high. Notice the clearing movement from here. Once again, it's withdrawn. Comes low to the center line, strike. Once again, it comes high. Notice on each of the movements from here, we had a strike and a clear. From here, the spear comes low. From here, I'll take a complete spinning movement from here. We want now, if we didn't concentrate on just a single, it would have been the other hand that was coming through. This time the spear will come high. Notice that once again I'm using now the double end. Notice the strike and the clear from here. This could have just as easily been as we're using the double end from here now, rather than striking with the top. As the spear comes low, the clear is now low from here. At this point I have two choices. The spear could be to this side, the spear could be to this side. Let's take either example. Let's take it first high to here. Notice it comes over, the strike is made to here. On the other hand, if it comes to the other side, from here, I could have cleared here or all the way over. Once again, let's go back and repeat just the first set using only the right hand. As I step back from here, the spear is going to be, first of all, low. Spin. Notice this is withdrawn from here. I'll bring this all the way to the body. From here, we're concentrating only on this one. We'll take the spear again low since we're using the right hand. 2. Notice in actual practice, let me step in closer. It would have cleared it completely past the body. The spear is withdrawn from here. This time I'll have the spear once again coming to the center line from here. I have two choices, but we're going to not use the left hand from here. We're going to take only the top. So the spear will come all the way through. This will come from here. Notice the block is now done from here. This would clear the spear completely past from here, this side of the body. If I wanted, I could have double checked with this end. Let's go back to the basic elements of the spin again. Right from here, if I want, as the spear comes high, it could have came directly across. Or if it came low, the movement could have been to here. We'll withdraw it, we'll take it in the formal section, design back into position from here now. Since we want to concentrate only on the left side, it comes to here. Notice the low clear and the spear is withdrawn. Notice as it comes to the center line, the spear comes back to the center. The spear is withdrawn. It's coming down. Once again, so I'm blocking down and across. So the spinning movements in any of the katas are done for two reasons. First, it's a block, and second is to put it to the opposite side. The next section now, of course, is going to be repeated without an opponent. If you just visualize, we're taking the same thing, but now what we've introduced from here, we're going to be stepping forward, and we're going to be stepping back, so we take the spinning movement. I will now incorporate the next two sections from here. Your movement from here, as I step back and spin, 1, 2, 3, 4, the exchange of the hand and the strike. Now notice as we're coming forward, it's the same type of a blocking movement. I block, I change to the opposite side from here to step forward and strike. The same thing as I'm stepping back. I can block with either end, I can block with either end. I pivot now and strike to this position. We will now take the movement from here. Actually, it's quite simple. They're just a matter of using it now as a spearing motion from here. I'll just have the opponent stand in position. The next application will take the actual application of the kata. Once again, this movement could have been the final movement of my stepping, or it could have been a movement striking. What we're going to do is now take it from the kata application. Once again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the staff as a spear. As I do, I'm going to strike forward to the opponent. What the opponent has done, of course, in this particular thing is intercept the center line, in this particular case, so they've been able to deflect. My spearing movement passes side ahead, and I will over-exaggerate this as the contact is made to show you how my particular motion has been cleared past the opponent's head. What the opponent has then done is gain the advantage of the center line. They will then step in this particular case, or they could have used the spearing movement from here, and I will show you why we use exchange of the hand, the turnover of the staff, and then our counter motion. From this particular position then, from here, once again, I have made a spearing movement to the center line. First of all, I will not have the opponent block. I will show you what would have happened from here if there had been no interception of the center line. Notice the strike would have been to the head, the target, or the body. What the opponent has done in this particular case, though, from here, is to intercept the center line. And so as I'm striking forward, notice it's been cleared to the outside from here. The opponent now has the advantage of being on the inside of the center line from here. Since they also have a reach advantage, what I'm going to have to do, this particular step back. Notice as I do, however, I'm going to use the hooking movement down from here now, much as we did on the sword, to clear it to the center line from here and make the hand exchange. So from this position, as the opponent steps in now to gain the advantage from here, I clear this past this side of my body. Notice how I turn it over from here. The hand exchange from here, then I gain the advantage and striking forward. The next movement now from here involves our low sweeping movement from here in a matter of gaining distance. From this particular position, we clear the opponent's motion from here. I'll have the opponent come in this particular case, using the spear once again with simply a low spearing movement. So from here, as the opponent is coming in with a spearing movement, I intercept this, continue through. Notice, there is my actual striking movement from here. Once again, my first movement is low on a clearing. Notice when we're talking about a clearing motion from here, this allows me to clear the entire lower section of the body from here. I'll have Pat demonstrate this at several different angles. First of all, she'll strike low as if it were to the foot. Notice, there's my clearing movement. She will take a little bit higher. Notice, there's the clearing movement. Okay. But what I have both hands to give me the advantage of the power, enough to put this in a direction from here that the opponent cannot recover before I complete my movement for the strike. So as the spearing motion is in, notice I've cleared, and the opponent's motion is going from here. What they would have to do is clear it completely over the head, or they would have to be able to reverse it to get back. I want to hit this hard enough that since I've got the momentum and velocity from here, that I won't be able to make the strike for the opponent. As the spear is coming in, it's down low 1, the motion 2. It is completed from here. I'll just have Pat move out of the way on this one. And the kata, for practice, we add one more motion. I'm going to take the next motion in the kata without a partner to start with, then I'm going to change the angle so you can see what we're doing. Imagine at this point now that this has been blocked down in such a manner I'm underneath the opponent's weapon, which will be a spear this time. I will clear and step forward with the strike. In this particular case, I'll have the opponent take it in this direction. My motion is ended up in a manner such as this. So from here, as the opponent is coming in, and I'll gain the distance from here as we're coming in. From here, it can either be a spearing motion, but my movement now will be to clear this low. So the movement from here, as the spear is coming in, notice how I clear the spear high. I step in. Notice declaring the strike to the groin. The cuff is finished off from here. One more time on the breakdown. The motion was from here. As the spearing movement comes in, notice it can be almost at any angle, from here or to here. It can even be from a low position, from here. What we're doing on each of these, and this is why I use the forward hand from here in a short motion. Once again, as it's coming in, I intersect, clear it over the body, over the head, strike to the groin. This ends the breakdown of the physical application of each of these movements. Notice while we've had a specific counter and defense for each of these movements, as we get into more applications of more advanced staff sets, notice we'll take the same movements and simply adapt them to different attacks by the opponent. Our basic movement will always be the same. It's simply a matter of understanding the movement, understanding the opponent's weapon. How do you gain the advantage? Once again, we will take these basic applications and you will see them repeated time and time again in all of the staff sets that follow.